jobs, it's like you sort of have book publishing, and then you sort of have capitalism, and then there's a pretty hard science within capitalism, but in book publishing, everybody is so kind of like emotionally affected by the election that they kind of think that everybody else will just like stop buying books or other catastrophic things.
And right now, interestingly, I mean, we're already in a world where fiction is doing so much better than nonfiction on a broad scale. And publishers have pulled back on some of the nonfiction acquisitions. However, after 2016, there was a huge boom in nonfiction sales because everyone wanted to understand. They wanted to understand what was happening. They wanted also to read about the inner workings of the Trump administration. And so I think we're going to see, for better or worse, some of that come back, but it'll take a little time, of course, for some of those books to hit the market.
Hi, I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 28 years.
I'm Elly Blue, the vice president of Microcosm. We started this podcast to share what we've learned with newer publishers, so you can learn from our mistakes. Or maybe you just want to learn about the publishing industry.
This week, we welcome back special guest to the pod, Jane Friedman of The Hot Sheet. And we are going to look at post-election book sales trends, which...
And we might cry.
We are feeling a lot lately. What big, like, broad strokes trends are you seeing in post-election spending, Jane?
Well, at the time of this recording, it's still quite early, but there's already been a huge spike in dystopian literature sales. So things like Handmaid's Tale, 1984. And we saw that with the 2016 election as well, huge spike in sales of those sorts of titles. But interestingly, what happens is those eventually kind of die off. And then you start getting people going in an escapist direction. So people buying cozy mysteries or cozy paranormal mystery, romance, etc., to escape the current events or news cycle.
We publish mostly nonfiction, so we have a little micro analysis there.
Or a big one, really.
Big micro analysis.
Yeah, so what happened after 2016 and what are you seeing now?
2016, we woke up to... We had just started publishing more like sort of mental health, trauma healing stuff. It was doing fine, but it wasn't like huge. And then we woke up to just like a spike of that. And we saw that category go up year after year ever since then, to be honest. We woke up on November 6th which was 2 days ago as we record this, to just a ton of overnight orders for abortion care resources. But also herbal medicine, any kind of off-the-grid prepper kind of DIY projects. Also books about writing, publishing, and creativity, which is interesting. And then we are definitely still selling some of that mental health stuff. We're selling stuff a lot of how-to practical resources. So like way more focused on external action, stuff about activism, protests, and movement building. All of that. So it's less that people are trying to understand this time around and more that they're like, all right, what am I going to do?
In 2016, we had most of the same abortion resources. I mean, we're probably the only publisher that has abortion how-to resources rather than just like arguments for in favor of or like catastrophizing about abortion or whatever. Like we're probably the only one that's like, here are practical things you can do. And that was obviously huge after Dobbs, but in 2016 that wasn't the great fear. We were selling lots of books about like direct action and like understanding, how to like affect change and things like that. Whereas, it's like kind of weird that this time abortion was like the immediate thing that like multiple groups found us for. And like, on Monday we were selling lots of books because a book that we published that went viral 12 years ago was rediscovered. It's called If Animals Could Talk, and it's an adult book about animals saying the F word. And
A very serious resource for our times.
and then that was Monday, and then Tuesday was like all abortion how-tos. And we're like, oh, I see. This is people reacted faster, I think. And from the people I talk to, like a lot of people are not yet in a place, you know, they're kind of more worried what you described, like most people that I have discussed it with. They're like, give me fiction.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of online concern for the LGBTQ community, transgender kids in particular, and I'm already seeing instructions being circulated for those people about what to do now. Do you have books on your list that are helpful for them? I'm wondering if the sales are going to be spiking there as well.
Those sales are definitely, like, we're starting to see a little bit, it's like more affirming stuff than how-to stuff, which is honestly because it's what we have. We have acquired like 3 zines in the last 2 days about sort of how to find medical care, like gender care when the medical establishment isn't going to help you, herbal medicine for gender care, and queer healing and that kind of thing. So we are working on that, and I think there will be a pretty large demand for that.
And by coincidence, we got a submitted pitch in October, and it was nearly identical to something a customer requested at an event. That is like how to have a conversation with somebody that you disagree with politically. And so we are fast tracking that thing, obviously, because it's suddenly significantly more relevant.
Yeah, there's a public domain guide to making your own estrogen hormone therapy. There's resources out there that we're definitely focusing on gathering those rather than whatever we thought our work priorities were going to be this week.
Right.
So, and it's, it's like our life is like this often where we're responding to where, and I guess it's like, this is the way that we respond to data is like, okay, this is where we're needed now. So we will do that. And then rather than trying to, whereas I feel like most publishers are trying to influence the habits of their readers or like telling them what they think is important or what they should respond to, we're deep on the other end where we're like, what are you interested in right now?
And then we amplify that. It's interesting. I've been thinking, like, if Harris had won the election, we probably would still be selling silly talking animals books this week.
Yeah. And we would be selling, like, because, prior to that moment, for the last, obviously, 6, or I don't know, going on a year now, it's been like Palestine, like stuff that in some cases came out over 20 years ago and nobody cared about until last year. And then we're like, well, I guess you read it now. So there's that. But, things like that is it's interesting how that sort of slipped the radar this week. But we'll see, like, because this leads me to conclude that there will be continued topical shifts, maybe on a weekly basis, maybe on a monthly basis, as things hit the news in the new administration.
Yeah, there are a lot of unknowns, of course. And I'm seeing a lot of fear from authors that publishers will stop taking on books that they think will get them in trouble somehow with the new government. Like even fear that publishers will stop putting out LGBTQ fiction. And I think some of that is rooted in the school book bans that have been ongoing for some time now. But I just can't imagine, and maybe this is naive, but I can't imagine publishers changing their publishing program because they're for self-censorship reasons. It just doesn't feel like that's in the spirit of even the big publishers. Certainly not in your spirit.
We're doing the opposite. But I mean, it's also like, I feel like that kind of lacks an understanding of marketing. It's like people want the thing that's forbidden. People want the thing that's like hard to find. People want the thing that like speaks to their current fears. And like I feel like our job as publishers is to like provide that rather than stoking that, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And we run into that one a lot, where like people will come to us and say like, I know you won't back away from this. And I'm like, well, they won't either, but I'm glad that you see us as like on your side with this, even though it can't, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the way I think about it is forever people want, like, everybody's interests are aligned because the author and the publisher want something that's relevant, and then if it's relevant, it resonates, and then it succeeds in the marketplace. So it like works under capitalism just the same. Whereas like nobody wins if you publish a book to a dull thud.
Yeah.
I just realized we probably need to pay a little bit more attention to online security, though.
Right. There's that, yeah. But yeah, we have good nerds for that. But yeah.
I'll look at with the nerds, because now we're like, oh shit, we have to protect our customers' data. Yeah.
Now, have you ever been? Have your books been banned in any places that you know of?
Yeah, that happens.
We're very proud of you that California correctional system has banned our book on masturbation.
Can't have the inmates doing that.
I was a bit like, oh, the threat.
It wasn't about making weapons from bodily fluids, was it?
If only that. See, now that we could sell and would. If you're listening and you have a proposal about that.
That's not just the prison system. That's any state-run in California, of all places.
Wow.
Like that's like treatment programs. That's like anywhere where like they're getting state funding.
Wow.
And I have the letter on my desk still because I'm very proud of that fact.
Yeah, Moms for Liberty hasn't come after us yet. When they do, I'll consider that a sign of our successful mainstreaming. But yeah, getting banned is usually not flashy. It's more like a particularly poignant customer service issue.
Yeah.
Right, explaining like what I mean, and you know, this happened years ago where like I mean, and you probably remember this era, Jane, where like when the shift from comic that were book length became called graphic novels.
Yep.
And people like were like, graphic novels, that's racy, like can't let that
for kids. Oh my gosh.
And then, you know, it was like a great misunderstanding or what. You know, but things like that tend to be more that we've dealt with, where we're like, no, it's just comics. But yeah, that's a former era sort of problem, and now it's like you have, you know, and that's like again marketing terminology that's like not really working for anybody. But yeah, can we end on a more positive note?
Honestly, like I think that watching the orders come in, like I'm sad that people need these resources, but it like is helping me get up and feel okay and focus on my day to see that we're able to do this. I highly recommend this line of work on a time like this.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at the bright side of this, I think it's good for the book business.
Yeah, that's a great point.
We're like beer, where we do best in hard times. None of this feels like a bright note, but I guess that might just be what we have.
Right. It's our reality now.
Yeah. Well, I hope everyone listening to this is doing okay and finding the book that gives you solace or tools or whatever you need.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.